What's up guys, it's Brendan here from addictgaming.net. Today we are going to do a updated build video for the Phantasm Mesmer for post April 15th. We're also going to be talking about the Ferocity changes and how that affects this build. Let's do an overview of this build before we talk about the Ferocity changes. Now, this build is a very heavy spike damage build. I kind of like to classify it as an assassin type build because we are going to be taking out one target at a time, but we're going to be taking out that target very quickly. We do tons of damage with our phantasms. Not only that, the build actually offers tons of sustainability through its playstyle alone. Summoning out phantasms and clones and popping into stealth and stunning with some of our utilities is a big deal, and it adds a lot of confusion to the person you're fighting. They're always trying to look for you, they don't know which one to kill, and some of our traits even damage a person if they're trying to kill our phantasms. And one of the great things is that our phantasms aren't on very long cooldowns, so even if they're trying to kill our phantasms, they're still taking damage from them, and we could be summoning out new phantasms at the same time. So the damage and the sustainability in this build are through the roof. But another great thing that we have is a lot of utility, which I was talking about. We have stealths and we have stuns. We can stealth and get out of a sticky situation and reset, summon out our phantasms again, and then by the time they see us, they're already taking a lot of damage. We can put so much pressure on somebody in this build to where they get put on the defensive side, and all they can do is try to heal and try to keep themselves alive. They don't even think about doing damage. We also have stuns, and stuns are actually a really big deal in this build because we have a 3-second stun with our signet, and we have a 2-second stun on our pistol weapon. And that's 5 seconds of stun, where the phantasms, if we had 3 phantasms out, they're pretty much hitting that target twice. For each phantasm's hitting that target twice within those 5 seconds. So not only that, there are better uses for it, but we'll go over that in the skills. But the stuns are very important in this build as well, and just to add to the sustainability in this build. Now there are a couple of weaknesses. I would say that movement speed is a big weakness in this build, mostly because we don't have much access to swiftness. You do have to bring a specific weapon with the Mesmer to get swiftness, and it's not a weapon that I prefer. But we will adjust to that weakness with our runes, and we'll talk about that later in the video. Also, kind of tying into that, we lack a lot of movement abilities. If you think of like a greatsword warrior, or you think of a double dagger elementalist who can get in and out of combat, and even if there's 30 people chasing them, they can still get away. We don't have that with the Mesmer build, so if you get caught with your pants down, there's really nothing you can do about it. So those are a few weaknesses in the build. We'll go over all of this more in depth later. Now, if we talk about the Ferocity changes, there's a couple things to talk about. First off, why did they add in Ferocity? ArenaNet just wanted to lower the critical damage in PvE, so why didn't they just lower the percentages on the gear? Why did they have to add in Ferocity? And if you think about it, you know, with precision, precision increases crit chance, right? We don't have on the gear just percent crit chance, like 7% crit chance on this gear. No, we have precision, which increases our crit chance. Same thing like vitality. We have this much vitality, and that increases our health by this much. We don't have just plus blah 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 health on our gear. So they wanted the same thing with crit damage. Ferocity is like an aesthetic pretty much on the gear, where it's pretty much in line with the other stats. So you get the Ferocity, then that increases something. Now, their main goal was to reduce the critical damage in PvE. They said they wanted to reduce the critical damage to be roughly a 10% damage decrease if you're wearing all Berserkers. And if you think about it, that's not really that big of a deal, especially thinking that other Berserker classes are going to be doing 10% less damage to us in World vs. World. And, you know, we did so much damage before that getting a 10% damage reduction really is not that big of a deal. I've been into World vs. World a lot lately, post April 15th, and I can tell you that it's still extremely viable in World vs. World. In SPVP, the Ferocity changes really didn't change much. They wanted to bring the PvE levels down, somewhat equivalent to PvP, but a little bit higher still. So the PvP levels are still the same. So if you enjoyed this build in PvP, then you have nothing to worry about with the Ferocity changes. Now let's get into our gear and our stats, and we'll talk about our sigils and runes as well. Okay, let's go over our stats and sigils and our runes. Now, the stats we're looking for will be the same exact stats as the Berserker Amulet in PvP. So, we want a little bit of Vitality thrown in. That's why we go Valkyries for our armor, Power, Vitality, and Ferocity. So, we don't have the precision there, but we'll have the precision because we're getting Berserker weapons and the accessories and stuff as well. So, this is where we could put a little bit of Vitality in our build so we're not super squishy. So, Valkyries for our armor. And for the runes, I use Rune of Speed. I love Rune of Speed in World vs. World. Mesmer lacks swiftness. You know, if you want swiftness, you have to bring a specific weapon, which I hate using. So, I love Rune of Speed in SPVP and World vs. World. It works great. Especially SPVP, trying to move around the points quickly really helps as well. So, Rune of Speed for me is the rune of choice, and Valkyrie armor. For our weapons, we have Berserker weapons. Our first sigil will be Sigil of Bloodlust, plus 10 power each time you kill a foe, stacks up to 25 times, so it's an extra 250 power we'll get. And Berserker as well with the Sigil of Fire. So 50% chance on critical to trigger a Flame Blast for area of effect damage. I used to use the Sigil of Air, but I just think that Sigil of Fire is better. It does about the same amount of damage as Air does, and it also hits multiple people, so there's no reason not to bring that. For our staff, we have Berserker stats again, and we have Superior Sigil of Fire, the same thing on the pistol for the same reasons, and Superior Sigil of Energy, which I like to bring because we have one of our traits. When we dodge, we leave a clone behind, and this will help us get endurance to dodge and put out a few more clones. Now, like I said before, we have our Berserker stats on our rings and our accessories and our amulet. And this will give us our power, precision, and ferocity. So if we look at our stats, we're sitting at above 2,000 power. When we get our bloodlust going, we'll be much higher. For precision or for critical chance, we're at 43% chance critical hit, so that's pretty good. And this is where you can see the ferocity where it comes into play. So this says 216%. What it is every class's base critical damage is 150%. So if you have absolutely no ferocity and you crit, you're going to be doing 150% damage. And then you take your ferocity and that adds on top of that 150%. So now we're at 216%. That's 66% critical damage. Just keep in mind that I do have a rare on, so this will actually be a little bit higher if you have Sended Piece on. So if like what I was saying about ferocity before, in our last build video, I think I had 85% crit damage when I showed off the build. So we're losing roughly 20% crit damage after the ferocity changes. Alright, that does it about with our gear. Valkyrie armor, runes of speed, Berserker weapons. On the sword, we have Sigil of Bloodlust. On the pistol, we have Sigil of Fire. And on the staff, we have Sigil of Fire and Sigil of Energy. And for our accessories and rings and amulet, we have Berserker stats. Alright, now it's trait time. So let's get into it. In Domination, we have Illusion of Vulnerability, inflict vulnerability when you interrupt the foe, and Empowered Illusions. So basically when we go through these traits, you're going to be seeing that we pretty much pick up every trait that's going to increase our Phantasm damage. Because, you know, ourselves, we don't really do a whole lot of damage. It's our Phantasms that's going to be hitting very, very hard. So we want as much damage as we can get on our Phantasms. So here's Illusions deal more damage. That's a 15% damage increase that we have on our Phantasms. For dueling, we have Critical Infusion, gain vigor when delivering a critical hit. Now this is 5 seconds every 10 seconds. Remember this because we have, well, we'll go to the end of dueling. We have Deceptive Evasion, create a clone at your current position when you dodge. This helps us create a little more confusion out in the battlefield so people have a harder time finding us. That plays very well into Critical Infusion. So we gain that vigor when we do critical hits, so we can dodge more and get those clones out. Phantasmal Fury. Your Phantasms have Fury, so it gives our Phantasms a much better chance to crit. Sharper Images. Illusions inflict bleeding on critical hits. We don't really have much condition damage, so it's not such a big deal. Blade Training. Increased precision while wielding a one-handed sword or a spear. Reduces recharge on sword and spear skills. That means we're going to be able to use our Blurred Frenzy more frequently and our Illusionary Leap as well, which this combo is very strong. Confusing Combatants. Your illusions cause confusion to foes around you and around them when they are killed. Again, we don't have like a whole lot of condition damage, but you know, if you start adding up the bleeds, which will get a decent amount of bleeds just because of our Phantasmal Duelist, and then our Confusing Combatants, you know, it's a little bit of extra damage. You can't complain about that. And then Deceptive Evasion, which we talked about already. In Inspiration, we have Vengeful Images, grants retaliation to Phantasms. So if people are trying to kill our Phantasms, they're going to be taking damage just trying to kill them. Mender's Purity, I picked this up because in PvP and World vs. World, when I'm running in smaller groups, Arcane Thievery isn't always enough. So Mender's Purity, you remove 2 conditions when you heal, so that gives us a little more condition removal. And Illusions. Illusionary Retribution. All shatter skills inflict confusion. Now, we're not really going to be shattering in this build. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about skills. But this really is not too important for us. Compounding Power. Sorry, I always mess it up and say Compounding Powder. But Compounding Power. Gain increased damage for each of your active illusions. So we'll get a 9% damage increase when we have, we'll pretty much always have 3 out. Illusionist Celerity reduces recharge on illusion summoning skills. This is an extremely strong minor trait. That's a 20% recharge reduction on all of our Phantasm skills. So that's for a minor trait, that's actually extremely strong. And Phantasmal Haste, which actually got fixed with some of the Phantasms because there's a bug that wasn't applying this on some Phantasms. Phantasmal Haste reduces recharge on Phantasm attack skills. So there's less time between the attacks when you summon a Phantasm out. So this is actually Compounding Power, Illusionist Celerity, and Phantasmal Haste there's like no way you can take points out of this line because those traits are just so strong to this build. So anyway, that about does it for the traits. If you have questions or suggestions, make sure you leave them in the comments below. Okay, before we move on in the build, I'm going to cover something that I get asked a lot, and usually I don't put it in the build video, but I'm going to start doing so. Now, people like to ask what type of nourishments that you should use in a build, and we'll go over that. With food, with this build, I like bowl of sweet and spicy butternut squash soup, which gives us plus 100 power and gives us plus 70 ferocity, which is about 5% crit damage. It's 5 ferocity short of 5% crit damage. That, and with another thing for food, I like to use bowl of curry butternut squash soup, which is precision instead of power. I prefer the power over precision because I think we have enough precision in the build, and I just think the power overall is more beneficial than the precision. Now for utility nourishments, you can use Potent Master Maintenance Oil, gain precision equal to 6% of your toughness, and gain precision equal to 4% of your vitality. Or you could use Potent Superior Sharpening Stone, the one I like more. Gain power equal to 6% of your toughness, and gain power equal to 4% of your vitality. So, for me, personally, I would use the bowl of sweet and spicy butternut squash soup with the Potent Superior Sharpening Stone. But precision or power with the ferocity as well is nice. So you can, if you feel like you want more crit chance, you can use precision or get more power. Okay, let's talk about our skill setups for different aspects of the game, including PvE, PvP, and World vs. World. Now, for PvP, let me just put my weapon back in here. For PvP and World vs. World, I'm going to be using Decoy. Gain stealth and summon an illusion to attack your foe. This is really good to get out of sticky situations. It's a stun breaker as well. You can summon a Phantasm while you're in stealth, and if they had targeted you and put a target on top of your head, if you go into stealth, then you get rid of that target. They're going to have to find you and try to target you again. So it just adds a little bit of confusion to the battlefield and adds to your survivability in this build. Arcane Thievery. This one's really good against condition builds, and it's good against power builds as well. Mostly because you don't just remove conditions on yourself and send them to your target, but it's also a boon rip, and you can steal 3 of their boons. So if you think of like a double dagger Ellie build, as soon as they use Armor of Earth, you use your Arcane Thievery, and they pretty much wasted that 60 second, 75 second cooldown, and you have all the boons that they were supposed to get. Signet of Domination, I bring this in PvP and World vs. World as well. It's a 3-second stun. I really don't need the improved condition damage, but the 3-second stun is very nice. It adds to our stun locking capabilities, especially with our 2-second stun on Magic Bullet as well. Now, the only thing, when it comes to PvP and World vs. World, the only thing I might change, depending on the situation, is I actually might change Arcane Thievery for Null Field. And the reason I would do this is because if I'm in a much bigger group, then Arcane Thievery isn't nearly as beneficial as Null Field would be. So if I'm running around in a small group, I will bring Arcane Thievery. If the group starts getting like 10 plus, then I'm gonna bring Null Field instead. And then Mass Invisibility, it's another stealth, 5 seconds, not just for us, but for our allies around us as well. And it's just another way to get into stealth, buy ourselves some time. It's good for running away. It's also just good to pop into stealth to summon some phantasms and adding to our overall survivability. Now for PvE, of course, a lot of these skills are PvP focused. So we're going to bring, I like to bring Feedback, because this helps in a lot of encounters in dungeons and fractals. Create a dome around your foes that reflects projectiles. And Null Field is something I will bring in PvE. I won't bring Arcane Thievery because the boon rip becomes not so important. Maybe in the Dredge fractal where the Dredge are putting on a ton of boons. But other than that, I usually don't see a use for Arcane Thievery over Null Field. And the third one, you can use a few things like Portal. Portal's pretty good in certain situations in Dungeons and Fractals, or even Veil, like if you're in a Raw and you want to run past some content, some encounters, you can use Veil, which will help you use stealth and get by some things. So I would say just look at the encounter and see what you would want for that third one, what would help you the most. And Mass Invisibility is not a very good PvE skill, so I'll use Time Warp, of course, giving quickness to everybody inside the Time Warp. Okay, so let's talk about our weapon sets and some of our skills in the weapon sets, and I'll show you a few combos that I like to do within the weapon sets. So let's talk about the staff first. I think the first thing we should talk about is the Phantasmal Warlock. This is one of the strongest phantasms for single target damage. It just hits so hard, and one of the great things about it is it does 10% extra damage for each unique condition on the target foe. And one goal that we're going to achieve in the staff is being able to put a lot of conditions on. And we're not focusing on condition damage, but we're focusing on putting a lot of conditions on the target to increase our Phantasmal Warlock. And you'll see pretty much every skill in the staff is going to be increasing the damage of our Warlock. So if we go over our auto attack, Winds of Chaos, this puts a unique condition on the target every time we hit. So it has 2 unique conditions on, so our Phantasmal Warlock already is doing 20% extra damage to that target. We also have Phase Retreat. This is probably the greatest skill in the staff weapon. And this is the reason I love staff, because if you have like a Hammer Warrior coming up to stun you or something, you can Phase Retreat back. And he'll miss, and it just adds to your survivability. You can pop into Decoy or something like that, and they'll just be wondering where you are. And another great thing about Phase Retreat is it puts out a clone that's casting Winds of Chaos. So it's also putting unique conditions on the target. So if we are both sitting here attacking, we're going to be putting more conditions on, increasing the damage of our Warlock. And we also have Chaos Armor. When we put Chaos Armor on, if people hit us, they gain conditions, and we also gain boons as well. So that's another way we're applying more conditions to the target, increasing our Warlock damage. And we have Chaos Storm, which is, I said Phase Retreat is probably the strongest skill, but Chaos Storm probably is. When a target is in the Chaos Storm and they attack or do an action, they become dazed. and the Chaos Storm is randomly applying conditions. So we have Winds of Chaos, and then our clone from Phase Retreat. Both of those are putting on conditions. If we have Chaos Armor on and they're hitting us, we're also putting on conditions. And if they're in the Chaos Storm, that's putting on conditions as well. Everything is benefiting our Warlock's damage. So we look at our other weapon set. We have Sword and Pistol. We have our main hands, our auto attack and our sword. And this is actually probably the best DPS in the Mesmer's weapon sets. And Blurred Frenzy. This is a very powerful skill because not only does it do a flurry of strikes, but you're also invulnerable while you're doing it. So nobody can hit you while you're doing it. Illusionary Leap. We'll talk about this in a second, but this will tie into one of the combos in the sword pistol weapon set. And our second Phantasm, Phantasmal Duelist. This is a Phantasm unloads a shot on the target, and one of the great things is in one of our traits we have a chance to cause bleeding on crits, adding to the condition variety on the target, increasing our Warlock's damage. And then we have Magic Bullet, which hits up to 3 foes with a single shot. The first shot stuns, the second dazes, and the third applies blindness. So if I hit it, you can see it bounced from here to there. This guy, the heavy golem, was dazed, and the medium golem was stunned. Okay, so if we talk about certain combos, I'm usually running into combat with my staff out. I'll always put down my Warlock first, and then I'll throw down my my Chaos Storm. And then if you're starting to feel some pressure, you can use your Phase Retreat, put on your Chaos Armor, and you can see that our Warlock, just the Warlock alone, is already doing a lot of damage. Now another combo that you want to learn is in the Sword Pistol weapon set. And this has to do, basically if I'm a staff, I'll use my staff skills, then I'll come into Sword Pistol. Here, let me target this guy. I'll put my Duelist down. And then you can either use your stun to make this easier, so you can stun the target. Then you use your Illusionary Leap. Then if you use it again, you swap places with this guy and immobilize the target. Then you can use your Blurred Frenzy. And then he's going to be eating damage from your... By this time you should have a Warlock out, a Duelist out, and he's going to be eating damage from your Blurred Frenzy as well. You know, there's a lot of targets in World vs. World where I actually kill them in one burst. When I'm in my staff, I'll put my Warlock out, I'll put my Chaos Storm down, and then maybe Phase Retreat, do a few auto attacks, go into my Sword Pistol, then use that combo, and the target's pretty much dead by then. So again, I'll put my Warlock down, and then I'll put my Chaos Storm down, do a few auto attacks, switch to my Sword Pistol, and then put my Duelist out, stun him, use my Illusionary Leap, and then use my Blurred Frenzy. And the guys, a lot of targets are usually dead by then. If not, then I'll just go back to my staff and then start all over and make sure I'm getting my Warlocks and my Duelist out. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that I was able to impart some knowledge onto you guys about the Phantasm Mesmer. This is actually my 2 favorite builds right now are the Double Dagger Ellie and the Phantasm Mesmer with the Condition Engineer right behind them. Because something about the Mesmer is just so fun where you could do so much damage and you have so much sustainability through just the mass confusion you're spreading throughout the battlefield. Now, if you have any questions or comments, make sure you leave them below because sometimes I do forget to talk about things and I will try to answer your comments there. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and also share with your friends and let them know what we're doing over here at Addict Gaming. And if they like Guild Wars 2, then make sure that they're subscribing to our channel as well. Thanks, guys. I want to also go over some of the changes that came into the April 15th patch and make you guys aware of what has improved with the Double Dagger Ellie build and some things that were nerfed, but mostly it's pretty much all buffs that we got in the April 15th patch, which makes me excited because I love the Double Dagger Ellie build, and just to see it being a little bit stronger is good in my book.